My parents, with their superiority complex, tried to make me take the blame when my brother, the golden child, stole and crashed my car while drunk. They lied to the police because jail, they said, would ruin his life. Now, both my brother and my father are behind bars. I'm Alejandro, 28 years old, and my own parents tried to send me to prison to protect my spoiled brother after he stole and wrecked my car while driving drunk. Before I tell you how that single night ended with my father's business empire on the brink of collapse and my brother facing a judge, let me explain how it all began. It's funny what you remember. It's not the shouting or the threats that stick with you the most. It's the quiet moments, the silences that say everything. For me, that moment is right now, sitting at my kitchen table, staring at an official-looking envelope. The paper is thick, cream-colored, with the formal letterhead of the court. A summons in order to appear as a witness in the case against my own father. My girlfriend Sophia placed her hand on my shoulder a minute ago. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Her touch is the only warmth in a room that suddenly feels cold, despite the afternoon sun streaming through the window. I just nodded, unable to form words. This single sheet of paper is the culmination of a lifetime of being told I was second best, that my feelings didn't matter, that my purpose was to clean up the messes my older brother, Javier, left in his wake. My whole life, I've been the buffer for his recklessness. My father, Ricardo, is a prominent figure in our city. Garcia Construction, his name is synonymous with success and power. He's the kind of man who commands a room just by walking into it. Loud, confident, always in control. My mother, Laura, is the softer face of that steel coin. A high school teacher, respected and loved, the kind of woman who can make you feel guilty with just a sigh and a shake of her head. And then there's Javier, my brother, just a year older than me, but he might as well have been born with a crown on his head. He was the athlete, the charmer, the one who never did anything wrong, even when everything he did was wrong. This whole story, this mess that brought this summons to my table, is about a car, a 1999 Seat Toledo, an old police patrol car. It might seem strange to love something like that, but that car was my freedom. It was the first thing in my life that was truly 100% mine, a gift from the only person in my family who ever really saw me, my Uncle Juan, and they couldn't stand it. They couldn't stand that I had something Javier didn't, something he couldn't just take. So he took it anyway, and in doing so, lit a fuse that had been dormant for 28 years. To understand why I didn't bend as I was supposed to, you need to know what it was like growing up in my house. From the outside, it was the Spanish dream, a big villa in a nice residential area, manicured lawn, 2 cars in the driveway. My father's construction business was booming, and my mother was a beloved literature teacher at the local high school. We looked perfect, but inside those walls, a silent poison seeped into everything. That poison was favoritism. I must have been about 8 for my birthday. I got an incredible Lego spaceship, the biggest set I'd ever had, with over 1,000 pieces. I spent the whole weekend locked in my room, following the instructions perfectly. When I finished, it was my masterpiece. I placed it on the highest shelf in my room. A few days later, I came home from school to find it shattered on the floor. Javier, 9 years old, stood over the wreckage, holding the little astronaut figure. "It looked boring up there," he shrugged, as if explaining the weather. Tears streamed down my cheeks. I ran downstairs to the kitchen where my mother was grating papers. "Mom, Javi broke my spaceship." She sighed, that long, tired sigh she reserved just for me. Without looking up from her stack of essays, she said, "Alex, you know how your brother is. He's got a lot of energy. It's just a toy. You can rebuild it." But it took me forever. He did it on purpose. Then my father walked in, his work boots clomping on the tiles. He saw my face, then glanced toward the stairs. "What's all this crying about?" "Javi broke my Lego spaceship," I whimpered. My father looked at me, his expression hardening. "And what did you do to provoke him?" "Nothing, it was on my shelf." "Don't lie to me, son," he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous tone. "Javier wouldn't do that for no reason. You probably didn't let him play with it. You need to learn to share." That was the moment my 8-year-old brain understood the rules of the game. Rule number 1, Javier is never wrong. Rule number 2, if Javier does something wrong, it's Alex's fault. This pattern repeated throughout my childhood, science projects, sports, grades, everything. Javier could fail spectacularly and get encouragement, while my successes were ignored or somehow turned into lessons about humility. My only escape was Uncle Juan, my mother's brother. He was a national police inspector with a built-in lie detector that went off whenever he was around my family. He never said anything directly, but he saw. He'd show up at family dinners, and while everyone fawned over Javier's latest soccer trophy, he'd sit with me and ask about my technical drawing classes or the computer I was building. He spoke to me like I was a person, not a problem. On my 18th birthday, I had my bags packed. I had a part-time job at a supermarket and had saved enough for a deposit on a rundown apartment. Uncle Juan showed up at the house. "What's all this?" he asked, pointing at my duffel bags. "I'm moving out," I said, avoiding his eyes. My mother was in the background, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "I don't know why you're doing this, Alex. You're tearing this family apart." Uncle Juan ignored her and looked at me. You got a place lined up. Sort of, I mumbled. No, you don't, he said firmly. You're coming to stay with me. The guest room's empty. You can stay as long as you need. No rent, just help around the house and finish your studies. That was the day my life truly began. Living with Uncle Juan was like breathing fresh air after being trapped in a smoke-filled room. The rules were simple. Be honest, clean up your messes, and work hard. No mind games, no double standards. On my 21st birthday, Uncle Juan threw a small barbecue in his backyard. After we ate, he tossed me a set of keys. Happy birthday, kid. I looked at the keys, then at the street, where a boxy white sedan was parked, a 1999-seat Toledo with tiny holes in the roof where the light bar used to be. Is that a police car? I asked. He grinned. My first patrol car. They were going to scrap it. I bought it for next to nothing. Solid engine, not pretty but reliable, and it's yours. He put a hand on my shoulder. The thing about this car, Alex, he said seriously, is that it's not just metal and steel. It represents something. It represents self-respect. Don't let anyone take that from you. I was speechless. I walked to the car, running my hand over the hood. It wasn't just a car. It was a shield, a statement. It was everything my family's leased Audis and Mercedes weren't. It was real, earned, and mine. That car became my pride and joy. I spent weekends changing the oil, waxing it, hunting down original parts online. It represented my independence, my escape. Meanwhile, Javier was living large. Dad gave him a job at the construction company, a fancy title, and a brand new pickup truck. He crashed it in less than a year. Then came a sports car. He got pulled over for drunk driving, but Dad's expensive lawyer got it pleaded down to reckless driving. The car was impounded and eventually sold. The third car was a luxury sedan. He wrapped it around a telephone pole while texting. 3 cars in 5 years, and each time my parents were there to bail him out. Around that time, I started dating Sophia. We worked together at an architecture firm where I was a junior draftsman. She was smart, funny, and had a no-nonsense attitude I loved. She was studying law at night and had zero patience for spoiled behavior. The first time she met my family was at a Sunday lunch. She was polite, but on the drive home she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Wow. Wow good or wow bad?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Your brother," she said, shaking her head. "He talked about himself for 45 minutes straight without asking you a single question. And your parents look at him like he's the second coming of Christ. I don't know how you survived that." "Uncle Juan," I said, reaching for her hand. "Well, you survived. You got out. That's what matters." Her words meant more to me than she could ever know. She saw me, the real me, not the screw-up, not the second-rate son, just Alex. Life was good. I had a job I loved, a girl I adored, and a car that, to me, was the best in the world. I thought I'd finally built a wall high enough to keep my family's toxicity out. I was wrong. The past doesn't stay in the past. It waits for a chance to kick down your door. That chance came in the form of a call from Javier on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk, trying to finalize plans for a new housing development when my phone buzzed, and Javier's name appeared on the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail. A call from Javier usually meant he needed something. "Hey Alex, hey man, how's it going?" The fake cheer in his voice was an instant red flag. It was the same tone he used when he was about to ask for money or something he'd never return. "I'm good, Javi, at work. What's up?" I kept my tone neutral. "So funny story," he started, and my stomach clenched. His funny stories were never funny for anyone but him. "You remember my car, the sedan, the one I wrapped around a pole?" "Yeah, I remember." He laughed, a high, humorless sound. "Well, the insurance payout is taking forever, and Dad's being a hard-ass about giving me a new company car until my driving record's clean. Can you believe that? After all I do for the company." "Sounds reasonable," I said dryly. "Yeah, whatever. Look, I need a favor, a big one. I need you to let me borrow your car." I actually laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. "My car, the Toledo, no way." His friendly tone vanished instantly. "What do you mean no? I need it for work. I have to visit sites." "That sounds like your problem, Javi, not mine. You're a grown man. Rent a car, get an Uber, I don't care, but you're not touching my car." "You're being a jerk, you know that," he snapped. "It's just a car, a piece of junk. You barely drive it." "I drive it every day, and it's my car, the one I paid for, the one I maintain." "You've wrecked 3 cars Dad bought you. You treat them like disposable toys." The answer's no. "You're so selfish, always thinking about yourself, aren't you?" he shouted. Then the line went dead. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother, then my father. Same script. "Javier needs help. I should be the bigger person. Family helps family." I held firm. The answer was still no. A week passed and I didn't hear from them. I started to think maybe they'd finally gotten the message. Then one evening I left work and walked to the parking lot. I got to the spot where I always parked my Toledo and it was gone. My first thought was that it had been stolen. Panic surged and I was about to call the police when I saw it. A greasy scrap of paper tucked under the tire of the car next to mine. It was a gas station receipt from near my parents' house, and on the back, in Javier's sloppy handwriting, 2 words, "I took it." The rage that flooded me was cold and sharp. This was a new low. He hadn't asked or demanded, he'd stolen it. I called my mother first. Where is he? I demanded. Alex, what's wrong? She asked, her voice slightly shaky. Don't play dumb, Mom. Javier stole my car. Where is he? Oh, honey, he didn't steal it. He just borrowed it. He was desperate. He left you a note. He stole my car and you knew about it. How did he get a key? A long pause. He found a spare, she mumbled. I knew there were no spares. I had both keys that came with the car. You're lying, you helped him. I hung up and called my father. Tell Javier he has 1 hour to return my car to my apartment or I'm reporting it stolen. I'm not joking. You will do no such thing, he roared. You'll embarrass this family. 1 hour, I said and hung up. 45 minutes later, my Toledo screeched into my building's parking lot. Javier got out, smirking, and tossed the keys onto the ground. Happy princess, I looked inside the car. There were fast food wrappers on the passenger seat and the radio was blaring. He'd driven it like a maniac. How did you get a key? I asked, my voice dangerously low. Bought one online, he said, shrugging. A master key for old cars. It's not rocket science. That night I drove the car to Uncle Juan's house and told him everything. He listened, his expression grim. When I finished, he nodded slowly. All right, he said. This has gone too far. This isn't borrowing, it's theft, and we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. We spent the afternoon installing a hidden GPS tracker and a kill switch. He showed me how to activate it from an app on my phone. If Javier tried it again, I could disable the engine remotely. When I left, Sophia's advice from the week before echoed in my head. I drove to the National Police Station. I felt nervous, like I was the one doing something wrong. I approached the desk and spoke to a tired-looking officer. I explained the situation carefully. I don't want to press charges right now, I said, making sure my voice was steady. I'm not trying to get my brother arrested. I just want a formal record of what happened for my own protection. The officer nodded, understanding. You want to file a report for informational purposes? Yes, exactly. He wrote it all down and gave me a slip with a case number. I folded it and tucked it into my wallet. It weighed more than it should have. I didn't know it then, but I'd just armed myself. I'd created the one weapon my father's money and my mother's tears couldn't defeat. A paper trail, a fact, waiting patiently for its moment. The next few months were quiet, eerily quiet. I didn't hear from my parents or Javier. No angry calls, no guilt-laden voicemails. It was the kind of silence that felt less like peace and more like the air before a tornado hits. Then came Christmas. Christmas in my family was always a mandatory performance, hosted by my Aunt Patricia. Sophia convinced me we should go, show up, be polite, eat some ham, and leave early. We went in my Toledo. I parked it under a streetlight a block away. Inside, the familiar family atmosphere overwhelmed me. My mother greeted me with a too tight, too long hug. My father gave me a curt nod from across the room. And there was Javier, leaning against the fireplace, laughing loudly at something one of my cousins said. About an hour into the party, I saw Javier talking to my cousin Mateo, a bit of a troublemaker. I saw Mateo pull a flask from his jacket pocket and pour a generous amount into Javier's already full glass. Later, I saw Javier on the phone, his face tense, his voice a low, angry whisper. I only caught fragments. I told you I don't have it. I'll get it to you tonight, I swear. Just give me a couple of hours. He hung up, his face pale and sweaty. He looked cornered. He looked desperate. My internal alarm started blaring. I made an excuse to Sophia and went for my coat, supposedly to grab a portable charger for my car. My keys were in the right pocket of my heavy winter coat, buried under a dozen others in the guest room closet. I dug through the pile, my fingers searching for the familiar worn leather of my jacket. I found it and reached into the pocket. It was empty. A cold dread washed over me. I pulled out my phone and opened the GPS tracking app Uncle Juan had installed. The little blue dot that was supposed to be my phone was right where I was. I swiped to my car's icon. The screen loaded the map. The little red dot representing my Toledo should have been parked just down the street. It was moving, already 3 blocks away, heading toward the highway. A strange, chilling calm settled over me. All the years of being sidelined, ignored, and treated unfairly fused into this one moment of clarity. This was the end, the final line. I walked back to the living room, a mask of indifference on my face. I found Sophia. We need to go, I said quietly. She saw the look on my face and didn't ask questions. I didn't go to Uncle Juan. I didn't go to my father. I walked out the front door onto the cold porch, the sounds of the party fading behind me. I took a deep breath of the frigid night air and pulled out my phone again. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call Javier. I dialed 112. 112, what's your emergency? The operator's voice was calm and professional. My voice was just as calm. I'd like to report a vehicle theft in progress. What followed was swift and relentless. The police caught Javier on the highway, drunk and reckless. He'd lost control on a patch of ice and skidded into a guardrail. The car was damaged, but he was unharmed. When I arrived at the scene, my parents were already there, trying to convince the officers it was all a misunderstanding. Officer Sanchez looked at me. Is this your father, Mr. Garcia? He's telling me this is a misunderstanding. the moment hung in the freezing air. This was the point of no return. My entire life I'd been trained to back down at this exact moment, to absorb the blame, to smooth things over. My mother stared at me with pleading eyes. My father glared, his jaw clenched, daring me to defy him. I took a deep breath. No, officer, it's not a misunderstanding. My brother stole my car keys from my pocket at a family party. He has a history of driving under the influence. I reported the theft to prevent him from killing himself or someone else. I have a case number from the last time he stole it, if you need it. Officer Sanchez nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. They arrested Javier for vehicle theft, driving under the influence, and resisting arrest. My father exploded, shouting that it was my fault, that I was destroying the family. My mother had a breakdown, confessing years of secrets right there on the roadside. The perfect family was shattering under the cold, flashing lights of reality. Hours later, at the police station, I gave my statement methodically, calmly. Uncle Juan showed up, not as a cop but as my uncle, a silent, solid presence anchoring me in the storm. Because of the vehicle theft charge, a felony, Javier wasn't getting out on bail that night. He'd spend the weekend in a cell until his court appearance on Monday. My parents hired a high-profile lawyer, but even he couldn't wave a magic wand and make the steel bars disappear. A week later came the first confrontation. My mother called, begging to meet for coffee. She pleaded with me to tell the prosecutor it was all a misunderstanding, that I was angry and overreacted. "He's your brother," she said. "You can't let him go to jail. What you're asking me to do is lie to a prosecutor," I said firmly. "You're asking me to commit a crime to cover up his crimes. The same thing you admitted to doing on the highway. Have you learned anything from this?" She just shook her head. "You're so cold, I don't know who you've become." "I'm the same person I've always been," I replied, standing up. "The only difference is this time I'm not cleaning up his mess." The final confrontation came weeks later. My father summoned me to the garage where my car was being repaired. He stood there with Tony, the shop owner, holding a thick checkbook. He filled out a check for 5,000 euros and handed it to me. "Take it, and we're done. You go to the prosecutor, say it was a family dispute, and we put this whole embarrassing episode behind us." I looked at the check, then at his face. The arrogance was still there, the absolute certainty that money could fix everything. "I didn't take the check. This isn't about money, Dad." "Then what's it about?" he roared. "Revenge. You want to ruin your brother's life over a stupid car. It's about consequences," I said, my voice gaining strength. "Something he's never had to face, and something you've never had to face." He stepped closer. "You have no idea what I faced to build what I have, to give you and your ungrateful brother everything. I know you're trying to use company money to bribe a witness in an active criminal case," I said, my voice ringing with clarity. "I know that's illegal." His face went from red to pale white. He tried to use his ultimate weapon, his money, and it had failed. He crumpled the check in his fist. "You'll regret this, Alex. You're destroying this family, and when it's all ashes, you'll be alone." He was wrong. I wasn't alone. And this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of his end. Because I still had my own weapon, one he didn't see coming, that little slip of paper in my wallet, the case number, the fact, and it was about to turn from a shield into a sword. That night I sat at my computer and opened a new email. The recipient was the Official College of Surveyors and Technical Architects. Sophia had told me about them. They regulate construction companies and have strict codes of conduct. I was polite, professional, and factual. I introduced myself and my father's company, explained the ongoing criminal case involving my brother, and then laid it all out. I described how my father had offered me a company check, explicitly conditioned on me changing my testimony to the prosecutor. I attached a photo of the crumpled check, where the company name was clearly visible. Before hitting send, I forwarded a copy to my father's corporate lawyer with the subject line, "For your records." Then I hit send. There was no explosion, no immediate fallout, just the quiet hum of my computer. But I knew I'd just fired a torpedo into the hull of my father's carefully built empire. His power didn't come from his fists, it came from his reputation, his licenses, his ability to bid on lucrative government contracts. All of that was now at risk. Resolution. A week later, I got a call from the prosecutor's office. They were offering Javier a plea deal. If he pleaded guilty to the DUI and a misdemeanor vehicle theft charge, they'd drop the felony theft and resisting arrest charges. It wouldn't mean jail time, but it came with a steep price: 2 years of probation, a 1-year license suspension, hefty fines, 200 hours of community service, and mandatory attendance at a victim impact panel. I later learned what had happened behind the scenes. My father's lawyer had received my email and immediately called him. In no uncertain terms, he told my father he was facing a catastrophic professional investigation that could ruin him. The attempted bribery was a far more serious threat to his livelihood than Javier's car theft. The lawyer had advised my father to make it all go away quietly and quickly, which meant accepting the prosecutor's first offer for Javier and not fighting it. My father, the man who always fought, who always won, had been forced to surrender. Javier took the plea. His 200 hours of community service were spent cleaning graffiti off public buildings. He had to get a low-skilled job at a warehouse to start paying his fines and my car repair bill. He sent me a €100 check every month with a simple one-line note, for the car. The biggest change came from the victim impact panel. It was a mandatory part of his sentence. He had to sit in a room for 4 hours and listen to people whose lives had been shattered by drunk drivers. My aunt told me later that he sat there listening to a woman describe identifying her 17-year-old son in the morgue. For the first time in his life, he saw himself not as the victim of a bad night, but as the potential cause of someone else's endless nightmare. She said he threw up in the bathroom during the break and cried for the first time since he was a toddler. That was his rock bottom, not the cell, but the reflection of what he could have become in the tearful eyes of a grieving mother. He started attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. He got a sponsor. He kept working at the warehouse even after his community service ended. My father was forced to attend anger management classes. His company was hit with a hefty fine by the professional college and placed on probation for 2 years. He had to sell some investment properties to cover legal fees and fines. The arrogance was gone. He seemed smaller, quieter. My mother started therapy, trying to understand her own role in the family dysfunction, her enabling behavior. She and my father stayed together, but something had broken irreparably between them. A year passed, a year of silence, distance, and slow, painful rebuilding. I moved in with Sophia and we got engaged. I was promoted to senior draftsman at my firm. My life was moving forward on my own terms. My Toledo was fully repaired, looking better than ever. It was more than a car now. It was a monument to a battle I'd won. The final piece fell into place on a rainy Saturday morning, almost exactly a year after the Christmas party. I was at a cafe waiting for Sophia when the door opened and Javier walked in. He saw me and froze. He looked different, thinner maybe. The swagger in his posture was gone, replaced by a quiet stillness. He hesitated, then walked to my table. "Hey, Alex," he said, his voice low. "Hey, Javi." An awkward silence fell between us. He held out a familiar-looking envelope. "This month's payment," he said. "I got it." He stood there for a moment, shifting his weight. "Listen," he said finally, looking me in the eye. "I got my 1-year sobriety chip last week." "Congratulations," I said, and I meant it. "That's great." "Yeah," he said, a small, sad smile on his face. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry, not just for the car or the money, for everything, for being a terrible brother. I'm really sorry, Alex." It was the first honest, unconditional apology I'd ever heard from him. No excuses, no justifications, just regret. I looked at my brother, really looked at him, maybe for the first time. I didn't see the golden child anymore, just a man trying to find his way back from the rubble he'd created. "I know," I said. "Thank you." It wasn't forgiveness, not entirely. It wasn't a promise we'd be best friends again. It was just an acknowledgement, a start, and for now, that was enough. My relationship with my parents is complicated, a work in progress. We don't do big family dinners anymore. The mandatory performances are over. I see them on holidays for a few hours. Conversations are careful, tense. My father is quieter, still attending his anger management classes. He managed a stiff, awkward apology once, saying he might have handled things better. For him, that was the equivalent of a Shakespearean sonnet of remorse. My mother, through her therapy, is starting to understand boundaries. She calls but doesn't push. She doesn't try to assign blame. She's learning to have a relationship with the son I am, not the one she wished I'd be. It's fragile, not perfect, but it's real. Sometimes when I'm driving home from work in my Toledo, the afternoon sun glinting off the hood, I think about that year. I think about how a family, a life, can look so perfect from the outside but be rotten within. And I think about how sometimes the only way to save something is to let it burn to the ground first. That car, that old decommissioned patrol car, became the unlikely catalyst for it all. It was a symbol of my independence, and they couldn't stand it. Their attempts to take it, to control it, ended up costing them their own control, their own power. They didn't realize they weren't just fighting me over a car, they were fighting me for my self-respect. And that was a fight I was no longer willing to lose. I found my own power, not by shouting louder or fighting dirtier, but by stepping out of their toxic game and using the rules of the real world, the world of consequences, the world of paperwork, the world where the truth has a way of rising to the surface in the end. I didn't destroy my family, they held the match. I just refused to help them put out the fire they'd started. My peace didn't come from them changing. It came from me standing my ground, from knowing that I'd fought for myself and won.